Hey guys, it's Jay and Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
And you're listening to the Walk With Me podcast. This is episode 12. And as you might have guessed, today we have someone walking beside us and with us, one of my closest friends in the entire world. Truly, I think one of my first real sisterhood, deeply healing friendships. And also just a genius healer, coach, leader, many things that you'll learn through the conversation. Entrepreneur and business owner as well. So super excited, Jenny, for you to be walking with us today. And I know you're out and about. You want to tell everyone where you are walking today?
Yes. First of all, I love you, and I just love this idea and creation because this is
Thank you.
just what we do. So
Totally.
we just get to do it and share,
I know.
which I often feel like sometimes after our conversations, like, wow, we went through some really good stuff. I wish that people could hear that. So
Totally.
now,
Me too.
now they
I
can.
know. That's why I'm so excited.
Yeah. So it's early morning for me, just after sunrise. I'm in Kauai. And I'm walking down the beach. You might hear the ocean in the background. I'm walking down the beach on Hanalei Bay, which is one of my favorite beaches here on the North Shore of Kauai. And I was so happy to get shaken out of bed this morning to go have this beautiful sunrise walk with you.
I know. What is it? 6:45?
Yep.
For you?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
6:45.
So early. That is not my zone of genius ever. Beautiful. So, prompt to you guys. I hope you have your walking shoes on and you're headed out the door. My phone, I've had one of those days where I need to talk to my best friend. It's been like just a wonky, everything kind of going wrong kind of day. So it's the perfect time to get to drop in with you, Shin.
Amazing.
I'm not in a bad mood, and it's not like one of those bad things. It's just with hormones, being pregnant, and things just having to go with the flow. So right now my phone's on the charger. I need to charge it for a few more minutes, and then you guys will hear me transition to the walk outside. So we'll be walking soon. It's also gray and cold, so I'm definitely forcing myself and really wish I was on Hanalei Bay with you instead.
Yeah, it's not a bad situation.
So good. So, for you guys listening, I know that, first of all, Jenny, you just came and talked with my mastermind a few days ago. And one of the emails that I got afterward, right after our call, was from Danny. And she was like, thank you so much for bringing Jenny on. My favorite thing, she's so wise. And we did this whole amazing call about pattern breaking, and Danny was like, I loved that, and yet my favorite thing always is just getting to see your guys' friendship and getting to witness how you guys communicate and seeing just your emotion and interact with each other. That is so inspiring to me. And so it was a sweet note to get before having this with you, because and this episode is not to brag about our friendship, although maybe partially, because we both, I think we both worked really hard to have friendships like this in our life. Yeah. And I'm not sharing it with the world to brag, but sharing because I was once in a situation where I knew I should and could have better women in my life. And I needed the inspiration to hold me accountable to, first of all, recognizing that it does exist and it can exist. And then by seeing examples of it, I could see where I wasn't a match to that and what healing I needed to do or what boundaries I needed to set, and painfully what friendships I needed to let go of as I was growing in my life and trying to have an awesome business and trying to be more of a conscious person. And you really represent, I'm going to get so emotional today. My hormones are so wild today. You really represent that for me. You were one of the first people, I'll just share with you guys walking with us. We joined a mastermind together. That's how we met. Was it 5 or 6 years ago?
6 years. We're now 6 years in.
Yeah, 6 years ago. And this was a paid mastermind that we invested in for, I think we knew we were going in for sisterhood. That was part of the marketing, so to speak, and the energy that called us in, but also for our businesses and our personal healing. And I just remember one of our first dinners, sitting across the table from you and being like, "Oh, thank God, I really like her." She's like, I can just feel that love and connection, and ever since, that was like a changing point. And I thought maybe we could talk for a minute to start just about what kind of healing we've brought into each other's lives, and even on a greater scale, like what it took to choose sisterhood, and some of the changes, hard and exhilarating, that we've been through over the years together to create this kind of friendship with each other, and also with other women in our lives, like really have that be a cornerstone of our life.
Yeah,
How
I
does
love
that
this.
feel?
I love
Do you
it.
want to go first?
I was
Or
so
I
much
can go
to
first.
say.
Okay, go for it.
Well, you know what's sweet when you were saying that? I can really remember that I did not know that I was going into that mastermind for sisterhood. I
Oh, wow.
actually felt a little annoyed because the mastermind was run by our dear friend and teacher, sister, beloved, Nisha Moodley. And I just had been following Nisha and was desperate to work with her. Like, I was like, this woman has something for me. And it just so happened that the only thing she was offering at that point was,
interesting.
was a mastermind.
I don't think I ever knew that. I totally
Yeah.
thought you were consciously
Oh,
going
no,
in
I
for
was
that.
annoyed. I was like, well, I have to share
Okay.
space with these other people, you know?
Okay, good. Yes.
Truly. But what's interesting to me is my soul knew, right?
Mhm.
Because my entire life I have craved, from a deep place in the center of my being, intimate emotional relationships with other women. I have craved belonging in with women who actually see me. And so I can really look at the history of my life and watch how I was chasing it in all the wrong places. And I spent a lot of my high school, not in high school, I had a beautiful group of friends, but college and then afterwards, feeling very alone and feeling very left out, and feeling like I needed to contort myself into being something other than what I actually am in order to be seen and loved. And so there was a lot of pretending. There was a lot of internal dishonesty, like almost like betraying myself and sacrificing myself so that I could have friends. And what I didn't know is that I was deeply, deeply, deeply craving just the ability to exhale and into the presence of other women who are like, no, I get you. I get you deeply, and I love you. I love what you are actually. And so, yeah,
It's so funny to think about that, because you really are so good at sisterhood. It's like, you really are. And I think we were both that way. Like, tell me if this is true. Before, I think the biggest healing I needed was I was everybody's best friend, and I wore that like a badge of honor in my past life. And I called that, I didn't even use the word sisterhood a lot before, but I called that like being a great friend and having great friends. And I considered myself to have a lot of friends. And I really didn't have, honestly, anybody that I truly felt could hold me the way that I hold them.
Yeah.
And that was a big block. And I got off on it, which is what I learned later, while also suffering. A lot, suffering a lot, but getting confidence and a belief about life. Like, that's how it is, though. You are there for other people. You hold other people, and that's somewhat my innate gift. So that's just my job. And the block was that, and what I really think about in our friendship, I was thinking about this as we were going into the conversation, is like, I am okay. Like, because I was thinking, like, how will I start? Will I say she's my best friend in the whole world? Like, that is true. And what's different is I know I am your best friend, and you have many, and there's many women that you rely on, and I'm not the only person in your life. And that's actually become amazing to know.
Totally.
And what I was saying earlier is it's funny to think of you not having those deep relationships, because it's like so much of who you are is that, and I see it in all your friendships with me and with others.
And well, think of who I am, like, because what I do in people, one of the reflections I often get is people will tell me, I tell you all of my weirdest, most shamey shit. Like, that's what people tell me. They're like, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like I can tell you the weirdest things about myself. And I bring that forward in people. So when people,
and you also do that.
I do that.
You're really good at bringing those parts of yourself all the time to your friendships and letting your friends hold you.
Right.
Were you always like that, or is that also
and so people
new for you?
Well, I was, and then people didn't love it. You know, like being around me felt like not necessarily quote unquote fun. It felt like I wanted to go deep all the time. It felt like I wanted to be like, let's talk about this thing that's hard for you. And I was kind of chasing the wrong kind of friends that were like, that's just a lot. You know, I got the reflection. I got the reflection frequently that I was too intense, or that I was a lot for people. And that's just because I was trying to connect with people who had not yet experienced that depth of connection, and didn't really want to experience that depth of connection inside their own internal landscape. So for those people, and still to this day, for those people, I'm challenging. You know, like people are like, I don't know what to do with this girl. Because I just won't play on the surface. And so I was trying to be who I am. And then I was like, okay, so I guess I just have to play on the surface. And then maybe if I get close enough with people through this fun play, through partying on the surface, then if like we take enough drugs, we can go deep. You know?
Right. I guess I was like a little bit, not the opposite, but my take was like, I'll keep my stuff kind of on the surface. I've always been vulnerable and so open. I'm not a surface person. I never have been. So even in any past friendships, but I would take care of myself in the conversation. Like, here's what's going on, and here's what I'm doing about it, and this is why it's okay. And you know, and move on, and then let them just go deep, and never really take the space to be my messiest, hardest, like, can you handle this? Because the idea was, no, you can't. Like, no friend could really handle what's in there. So it's mine to always tend to on my own.
Right. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, and so that experience of, I often jokingly say that I bought all of my best friends. And it's still the best investment I've made in my life to date, like hands down, no question. Because what I was basically doing by enrolling in that mastermind was saying, like, my soul was calling me into it. I was trying to up-level my business because it had just gotten overwhelming. But what my soul was saying was, you deserve to invest in this aspect of your life and be met by other women who are investing the same amount in the same way. That was what I was deeply longing, was to be met in investment and exchange, you know?
Same.
And so showing up to that container was like, oh, and then everything changed.
Same. So I don't know, I think this could be juicy and fun. Tell me if you think so. I have this feeling that if we let ourselves reflect each friendship that really gets deep, and that we let ourselves be deep in, and that lasts, which honestly 6 years is a long time, and not in the scheme of how long I know we're going to be friends.
Right.
And we've been through a lot in these past years. And I think the hardest times to maintain a friendship are when your life takes different directions, especially when you meet someone and you're in the same space, which is, I think, why it was so easy for us to connect pretty intimately and quickly, because we had similar husbands, we related to some of the same challenges, we are in the same industry, similar stage in life, just married to our husband, no kids, starting our business, traveling the world together. And then we've changed directions, and there have not been a match over the years. You went through a divorce. I had a child, like you were like traveling the world dating again while I was becoming a mom. Like totally different stages, hard to relate. So our relating like really had to be true and deep. And so I think there's healing in that, in those kind of soul partnerships. And I wondered if we could kind of explore, what do you think the healing has been for you in being friends with me? And then I want to share the same with you, like the healing that we've gone through, that we've directly influenced in each other in some way, or walked together in deeply.
Oh, yeah, I love this question. Well, first of all, I think one of the scariest things as a human in an intimate, deep relationship, well, the scariest thing, the thing that has us close our hearts more than anything, is the fear of loss, right? So like when I look at it, I'm like, oh, the more, what we're afraid of losing, we get so afraid of losing something until we prevent it. We prevent ourselves from really opening to it all the way. Because we're like, oh, that would be devastating if it goes away. But one of the things that we can really hold for each other in sisterhood, and that we have held for each other, is that knowing of like, this is a difficult moment and I'm not going anywhere. This is a difficult moment and I'm not going anywhere. And we're like going to stay and sit in the muck together when the muck is present. Because our friendship, like you said, it has been, from the moment that we connected, there was just so much ease, joy, play, and laughter. Our little girls really get along. Our inner little girls really get along. Our senses of humor are just feed each other. We spend a lot of time in delight, and from the beginning, we both love to dance. We both love to play. We both love to go really deep. We both love to sit in temple and just like open to the mystery. And so those things were all really easy. And then all of a sudden it was like the mirrors, when we made different decisions on our life path. I made the really challenging decision to get divorced and like felt like I needed someone there for me more than any other time in my life. You made the equally challenging decision to become a mother and felt like you needed someone there for you more than any other time in your life. And it was like, can we still do this? And what has been most healing for me is I have never, ever showed up to you with anything less than my truth, even when my truth is uncomfortable for you. And I really have a deep trust that you can handle it and that you're not going anywhere. No matter how gnarly, no matter how much it hurts you. Like, I know I've said things that have hurt you, and I've like experienced you be in the hurt and stay. And that to me is just like, that's what makes it possible to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, is we're building a trust all the time in our mutual self-responsibility. And I just really trust you to show up and have like you have yourself. You've got yourself. And any inquiry that I invite you into, you're like, all right, I'm going there. Which has always been so healing for me, because that most scary thing is to invite someone into something and have them be like, that's not a real thing. Or like, you're full of shit. Or just stand firm and know, and I'm not even willing to look.
It's really interesting hearing that, because what you're saying, I feel like is a gift of mine that I love to get to use. Like a part of myself that I really trust is when I love in a friendship, and how, especially with you, because I don't know that I've ever also felt such an even exchange to want to give so fully of myself. Like I, when they say like people in your life make you a better person, I truly feel that of you. You call me into the edges to see the shadows where I can become better. and reflect what is great about me at the same time, which is such a beautiful balance in a relationship. And when I hear you say that, it's like, yes, I can and I will always have that in our friendship. I'm not going anywhere. So
Yeah,
I'm
my little
I'm
crab, my little hamster crab.
here I am. Here I am. Here I am. How do you do?
Oh my God, thank you for that. Truly.
And I think, for those of you that are walking with us, just to think about this in your own life, I'm hoping that you are keying into these relationships and getting to reflect on your walk today too, of if you have these relationships in your life and if it's annoying to hear because you don't, or maybe heartwarming to hear because you don't, it's all an invitation to create, right? Or to respond to the invitation that's probably showing up in your life if it's time for you to build those relationships.
Yeah, because we were saying, like, this friendship for me really was born out of a deep soul longing. Mm-hmm. And a deep soul longing often manifests as discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speak. And for me too, but I consciously knew joining the mastermind. I was like in this phase where I was deeply hurt by some friendships in my life, to the point where I realized I had to make a change, mostly because I was stepping deeper into my healing and also into my career. I was shifting from a world of the acting, performing world, which is so much just innate competition when your friendships are built in that environment. It's like born out of learning to relate to each other and competing for the role, literally, and a scarcity mindset too. And I just felt done with that. I really wanted to feel unconditional love in my friendships. And I really was seeking and going into the journey of being supported as much as I supported others. And I think for me, that has been like the greatest gift that you have brought to my life, in that you show up. You fully show up, even when you're messy. And often, actually, the times in my life when you've really shown up, I think it just so happens you were really messy in your personal life at those times. But that didn't stop you. And I'd never experienced that in a friendship before. The ability to be going through so much and be feeling hard times, and not to let those override your ability to show up and be. Literally, when my daughter was born, I think you were in a very hard stage in that point, and you flew across the country at the last minute to stand beside me, and not sure she would have came out of my vagina if you weren't there to hold my hand and tell me that I could do it. And, recently when my mother died too, I remember it was a busy weekend for you, a lot going on, and you moved and shifted things to be at the funeral and make it there with me. And those are like two big life events where literally you brought your body to show up, but also anytime, on any phone call, in any moment, you know how to balance, sharing with me where you're at, and are genuinely still interested and capable of letting me also be held by you in those moments. And I have never, that is a lesson for me that has healed far beyond friendships. I mean, that has healed mother wounds, that has healed, my confidence in my business sometimes, like, and also in business, I have had you at every big moment in my business too, consciously. Part of probably why I want you on this podcast, because I don't like to set, I'm a little different, that, my business is not so separate from my personal life in some ways. It really is all together. And you're in every holiday challenge, which is a big marketing event I do. And some of the best feedback from that challenge is, I love the video with you and Ginny. And every big retreat that I've done, you've always been there in person, because I want you to know the clients that I have and who I work with, and I want them to know you. And this podcast was a big, exciting, and fun, true thing. And just immediately wanted you to be a part of it. And you're always a part of all of it. And that is, I don't think that's true of any other friendship, actually. When I think about it, that's like a special thing that I kind of consciously call you into, and you show up.
I love hearing this because exactly like you said, this is a favorite quality of mine about myself. You know, I think a lot in what I know about my personality and my particular incarnation this time around is that my life purpose is actually present, like deep, like just present. And so it's moving away from story and distraction to actually fully inhabit the present moment. And nothing calls me into that more than my most intimate relationships. And so I can actually feel how the stories you're telling, I'm like, yeah, you called me out of a bullshitty time, and that we're like, come show up in your gifts. And that's a gift, that call, you know, like come out of this abusive relationship cycle that you're in and be at the birth of my child. Like, okay, okay, I can do that, you know?
Yes.
And yeah, when your mom died, it was a time where like my relationship was ending, and I was navigating things, the death of my dog and all sorts of things, but you know, it wasn't quite as messy of a time, but it was definitely like, I'm holding a lot for me, and it's like to constantly stretch my capacity to do that and be deeply present in whatever's calling from life is a favorite quality of mine about myself. So I think this is like, we kind of just hit on something that is an essential ingredient of a deep soul friendship, which is you love the things about each other that you love about yourself.
Or that you need to be shown to really love about yourself. And you might learn to love that through your journey together if it wasn't super present before.
Yeah.
What would you say if someone's listening and they're really wanting to have more relationships like this in their life? What would you say, or is there any other key ingredients you would add that you've had to work on, the more shadowy pieces, to be able to have sisterhood, to cultivate it, to make space for it, commit to it? What's been the harder part of doing that for you?
Well, I think you have to be willing. So you have to be willing to not judge the other person for their humanness, because they will have that humanness. Like the other human that you're in relationship with is going to let you down, right? They're going to do things you're like, that thing that she does isn't my favorite, you know, and I can see it. And the more I get, you know, and the more I get close to her, the more I see those things. But but generating our capacity for that, to hold those parts too, is what actually deepens the intimacy. And that only comes from doing that for yourself first. Right. The more you explore all of the corners of your own being and are like, this part of me is not my favorite, you know? But one of the things that we laugh about, we have laughed about, is that, like, you know, we think we're hiding ourselves from each other. And so there have been moments when I've come to you and been like, I'm about to tell you this terrible thing about myself, and I can't believe I'm going to reveal it to you. And then I tell you and you're like, yeah, I already know. You know? Like, duh. I've been dealing with that one for years, you know? And so it's a sweet thing, you know, to recognize that really we see a lot about each other, and we can hold and see. The more we can hold and see about ourselves, the more we can hold and see about each other. And it really is, it's an experience thing. And you only know you're there when you're watching your sister, your dear friend, do something, and it's annoying you, or it's triggering you, or it's like really giving you the feeling of like, I wish that wasn't true. And then you just get to be like, and it is. And so how do I not judge it or make it wrong, but feel into how I can hold it? And then I think, like with any great relationship, we're meant to call each other forward through that pattern. But you can't do that if you're not loving it. And that's the hardest moment. Like, because you might be doing something, and then the second I make it about me, then it's just gone. It's like gone. My capacity to really hold it and love it is significantly lessened.
I would say mine is similar, like to what you're speaking. The word I hear is like self-responsibility. That has to be present for yourself. And I think the harder part for me was the many years I spent not knowing how to discern when you leave a relationship, like the discernment of seeing those moments of trigger and judgment come up, and then if they come up often, how do you know when to stay, or when there's actually a boundary where you need to let go of a relationship? And for me, it was always so hard. That was the hardest shift for me to cultivate sisterhood. I first had to learn that, like the true discernment of that with people in my life. And I just remember it feeling like I am an egotistical asshole if I leave this friendship because I'm not getting what I want. And there was this like shadow side of like that you should always have compassion. And also I do have a gift for seeing where everyone's coming from, and I can make an excuse for every human thing. I got really good at that, having parents being drug addicts. It was like the world would be like, this is not okay. And I would be like, yeah, but they're good people. And I see their intentions underneath it as parents, and it's okay. I'm safe. So that transition of actually making a claim and saying, I want the deepest friendships. I want friendships that allow me to give all of myself, and that I can become more of myself and be called into higher levels of success in all areas, intrinsically and extrinsically in my relationship. And then this concept of like the 5 people you spend the most time with is like the frequency and the kind of glass ceiling for how much you can grow, right? And so like I had to let go of some of those lower vibrational, like abusive is an extreme word. I don't know if there's like you know what I mean though? Like it just sounds like toxic. Yeah. And like to really let myself let those go, to call in the greater version of myself and those greater friendships. And that was so hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so interesting because that particular thing was less hard for me because I felt like I was always the one chasing the friendship. So when I stopped putting energy and attention into chasing something because something better came along, those ones just naturally dissolved, because that was just that was my pattern. That was my way. Like I was for the one thing like, love me after the friendship that wasn't a match. And so when I stopped chasing, they just naturally dissolved. And I didn't stop chasing until I got a taste of like what was actually available, and then I was like, oh, forget the effort I'm putting into those things. This is where it's at. But it's just interesting how we all come different paths.
One hard moment pops out for me though in mind with you in friendship, in that like you would never post and share publicly on your Facebook pages and things. Like I remember I took a picture when we were in Temple, and you were like, I am not sharing a picture like that, because there were friends and a different group of friends that you were like, I don't trust they can receive that. So there was like, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but there was definitely a part of you were hiding, and that was hard for you, that transition. And I was actually honoring this the other day because your entire Instagram now is like fully you, the most woo-woo like experience. There's nothing you hide, and I see that authentically, and that was not true through your transition.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny because it's like when we really heal something, sometimes it's hard
you forget that it was hard.
It was so hard. Yeah. I was judged really hard by a particular, I just inhabited a fully different world. Like I really did. And so for me to
you kept your friendship world separate. There was like two parts of you. And I bet a lot of people walking with us today are doing this. If they're going through there's got to be many that have to go through this too.
Right. I had an entire community which was built around like the friends that I had in my life, but also my marriage to my then husband and the friends that we had together, which was a much more conservative community. It was a community that like they were open to my holistic health and nutrition stuff, but that's as far as they were willing to go, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to push them for fear of losing or being judged or being shamed or made wrong for what was actually my true nature. So I can really now, as you're saying this, feel back into that fear, and it was heart-wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there was like, and I did it a little bit clumsily when I think about it, but I don't know if there's a way to move through that transition without feeling a little clumsy. Like my soul was just appalled at the way I was living. Like my soul was like, no, this is not it. And so there was sort of a series of initiations that actually forced me out of the spiritual closet, like forced me into sharing that I probably wouldn't have chosen. And, yeah.
Yeah, definitely not what you would have chosen.
Nope. Sure. But it was me leaving love notes for myself. You know, that's one of my favorite things to witness, like the mystery of our souls and how they work with us. I think it's so fascinating. Like, and now I'm just so open to it. I'm like, oh, my soul did that because my human was too resistant. Mm-hmm. And my soul is really deeply committed. Like, I am here for the evolution of the planet. That is it, period. End of story. And so my soul is like, we're not going to play in this space. And so I might get kicked out of the nest from time to time. And I've been working in the past few years, especially after like a recent knee injury where I really feel like I got pushed down the mountain by my spirit guides or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and my work since then has been like, okay, if I'm just fully willing, perhaps the lessons can be more gentle. And I've really been leaning into that. And that has been my experience. Like, so if I'm willing to be transparent, if I'm willing to push myself out of the nest, life doesn't have to do it for me. So yeah, that's sort of a tangent, but yeah, wow, I totally forgot about that experience. And I did not want to post a picture with a priestess crown on. And now I'm like, here I am in my tantric workshop with my my crystal feather headdress from Burning Man.
Good morning. Just having a sip of medicinal cacao while I pull my oracle cards. And
after guiding mushroom journeys.
Yeah, but that is like that, you know, it's like, this is why I wanted to talk about this, because those transitions are not easy. And if people just ever look at other people and are like, oh, look, they just have a gift for friendship, or they just got lucky to be connected. It was for me, and I know for you, deeply turning toward that identity change and honoring ourselves through the process and trusting the process enough to let go of the boxes that we had ourselves in, to be able to expand. And that expansion feels like a terrifying free fall. It's like jumping out of a plane with no backpack and parachute. And you really don't know it doesn't really feel at the first moment like you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You feel like, you got to try to keep them separate or hold on to them both. And eventually you have to let go of the other, that part that's holding you back.
Yeah. And I think often of one of my favorite poets and deeply wise teachers is a man named David White. And there's a quote that, many people have heard of his that I just really clung to in those times, which was, anything that doesn't bring you alive is too small for you. Mm-hmm. And to really, a tracking mechanism in my life journey has been follow the aliveness. Mm-hmm. Like, really trust it. The thing that lights that spark inside of you, even if it feels dangerous. Because the truth is, I was never more alive than when I was sitting in Priestess Temple. I was never more alive than when I was working through my deepest stuff with these new women who were showing up in my life. And then going back to the other stuff, the dinner parties that just weren't a fit for me anymore. Yeah. Felt very small. And so it's like leaning in and trusting that edge that's pulling you towards aliveness it's a risky, I mean, it's like feels risky, but it's everything.
Maybe that's the key, because I think when I struggled most was focusing on this side that was like the admission of these things are too small. And then it's the feeling of like, you're not allowed to say that. And so, and able to feel worthy of and confident enough to and compassionate enough for the greater good, it's more about focusing on the aliveness and allowing yourself to follow that and gifting that to yourself as your main intention and focus, and knowing that is in the highest good for all.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have you back on the podcast because we're only just getting started. So this will be like Ginny and Jay part 1.
I love it.
We'll definitely do another, but this will be a deeper conversation. Maybe we'll do a full episode about this, but you talked about this, and I think it might be good to just touch on in this moment. We talked about the grief that we've both been through together recently, and pretty, close with you. I lost my mom first, and you lost your best friend and dog soon after. I'm just wondering if there's anything you want to share about, or maybe it's even just an invitation to tune in and acknowledge where you're at in your grief, and anything that you would share about what you've learned about grief on this path. And so present.
First of all, I feel so, like, to me, grief in this moment still is like the teacher that you hate but are so grateful for, like the one that really kicks your butt, but you're like, oh, this is the one that's actually giving me my superpowers. Because what I can really feel about grief is, first of all, it's an active process. Like, it is an active process. It needs to move through ourselves. It needs to move through the body. But when we're really willing to let it without numbing it or shutting it down, like when we're really willing to open to the wailing and the depths that just excavate from the bottom of who you are, what you're basically learning in that moment is, I can handle it. Like, you're teaching yourself, my heart is big enough to handle this. And then that immediately begins to rewrite all of this stuff inside of you that would have you close your heart up until that point. Like, we hear so often about being broken open, and that that really breaking your heart is the only way to open it. And I kind of feel like I got that vaguely, but there's something about a really deep grief experience that I now see, I'm having a lived experience of that. Meaning, if I trust myself to move through heartbreak, there's no reason to ever close my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so to constantly be in this to be grieving almost constantly, that is really what it is to be a human. Because every single thing, the inescapable truth is, every single thing that we love will die.
Yeah.
Everything in this realm, And so we spend so much time. I saw this funny thing the other day that's like, maybe if I get internet famous enough, I can outrun impermanence.
That's amazing.
Right? And I was just like, totally.
Maybe that's actually what people are seeking. That's why there's this desire for all these followers and likes, because your Facebook profile doesn't have to die.
Yeah, right? It's a very interesting concept.
Wow,
so
I never thought about that.
Yeah. We're all terrified. We're all terrified of the impermanence. And one of the things that grief is helping me to come closer to is death, like in general, and what that is, and how natural, and how we've really vilified it and made it so other and pushed it away from us. And we don't want to look at it, and we don't want to be close to it. And I really just feel myself leaning into it and going, teach me about death. I want to become increasingly unafraid of dying. And as I do that, and of losing other things dying, and as I do that, I become ever more powerfully present in the moment. And I don't need to be outrunning my own impermanence.
With 1 million Facebook, Instagram followers and a swipe up option.
Right? Oh my God. So, Really,
Yeah.
like, let's really be real about what we're doing. And we're
Yeah.
afraid.
I would say for me, it's been like the initiation of grieving has me turn face toward the way I use control as a trauma response, and how I've set myself up to believe that safety is found through my ability to like manipulate or control with and manipulate and control, not always in a negative way, in beautiful ways, like the way that I show up, but try to wrap my arms around and hold everything. And just the impossibility of truly holding everything, specifically like 2 moments stood out to me when I showed up to Circle one day. For those of you walking with us, Ginny and I are part of a circle with 3 other women who are dear sisters, and we meet every Monday, and we each get a 20-minute hot seat to just say what's real and then receive support and feedback from each other. And during my mom dying, it was like during a few days after her transition, and I was having this feeling like I needed to do more of a ritual to help her soul transition to the other side. And I don't remember if it was you or Sora. I think it was a combination of you both said something to the degree of like, and do you think you're God? Because I'm pretty sure she'll make it without your support. And like, I was so open to hear it. Thank God. I was able to really laugh and also like, wow, that is ridiculous how much I think I can actually do. Like the control that I actually think that I have.
Her soul is waiting for you to light a candle.
As if I'm so powerful that only I can make this transition gentle for her. But it's interesting because since that, I've actually heard a lot of people in grief say things to that degree. And I look at them and I'm like, oh, you're doing what I did. You think you're God, or that your control like really can change fate, or like can stop what we're afraid of, or even do what we most want to do, what we wish that we could have more say over or whatnot. And like equally so, the compassion that I've had to have for myself, like with grief, um how much guilt and shame comes up in those early stages where the first part of the process is to question whether you did everything right, and to want to place the blame somewhere. And I haven't even shared this with you yet. I just found out yesterday we've been waiting 5 months for the autopsy report from my mom. And we just got it, and it's been so frustrating waiting because we didn't know if it was a homicide or not, and there's just been so much question. There's been zero answers, zero control, nothing to hold on to as to the why.
So perfect medicine for you to sit in for 5 months.
Well, just guess what? The final answer is undetermined. That's the autopsy is complete. This is very rare. This doesn't happen often, they said. And I don't know what the details are yet. I'll get the report probably in another year, for God's sakes, who knows when. And it's undetermined. And so sit with that. There's my medicine in grief. Just you are not always going to have a perfect answer. You're not going to know the how. And I am learning through this process, like the deepest level of acceptance around that. And it has been initiation, but it's been a gift. Like you've said, it's like I can do life in a different way because I'm learning how to let things die with no answers and just move forward with trust and love and find stability in that without having my arms wrapped around anything solid.
Wow.
Undetermined. That's
undetermined.
it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I just love how one of my favorite things about the way that we're able to converse is that you get that information and you then are like, oh, this is exactly how it's supposed to be for me.
Mm-hmm.
This is
And I
my,
feel it.
yeah,
And I
this
hate
is
it. And I feel
totally.
it. And it's okay.
And that's, one of the things that I do when I hold people in some pretty deep processes. And one of the things I often find myself saying mid challenging ceremonial experience is, you don't have to like it, but you do have to stay with it.
I know you said that last week, and I think I've repeated it to different people 100 times.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's really sweet, right?
yes,
To be like, you don't
yes,
have to like it. You don't have to like it.
yeah.
And I've been
There's
watching.
comfort in that. It's so comforting to be able to say that and not to have to try to pretend otherwise.
Exactly. And I've been watching, I'm here in Hawaii living on a beautiful piece of land and sort of like a little community living situation. And one of the families on the land is a mama, and she's got a 1.5-year-old. And that's how she speaks to her little one. She just says, like when her little one starts crying, I'm frustrated about something, she's like, I know. It's very frustrating not to be able to do what you want, but you can't,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
but it's an acknowledgement, And I'm
Truly.
like, oh, that's so interesting, as opposed to being like, no, look over here, do this instead, let's do this, you're going to be okay. It's like, oh no, you want to play with every single spice in the spice cabinet, and you can't.
Right. And it's okay if you're pissed, but you're going to be pissed about this a lot in life.
Exactly. And it just feels like having a level of respect for one another,
It
and
does.
so, like, I really feel that with my clients. And I'm always just like, I get it. I see you in this. I see you working your ass off, and you do not have to like it. And you can sit here and tell me, I can hold it. You can tell me about how you don't like it. And I can just sit here and be like, I know, and I see you doing it. And it's really cool.
I had a moment like that with Violet the other night, actually. She, out of nowhere, threw this, she doesn't throw many tantrums. This is like the second one that I can really account to, and she's almost 4. And it was at night, we were going to shut the light off, and she just flipped out about shutting the light off. She wanted to read more of her story, like flipped out, screaming, lunged toward the light switch and shut it back on. And she's like, we are leaving the light on. And like, it was 10 o'clock and it was time for bed. And we tried to shut it off a few times, and I was watching, like, and just telling her, no, Violet, it's time for bed. And I was like, this isn't working. And so I let her turn the light on, and I took her in my arms on my lap, my hands behind her head, her like resting on my arms, and I stared her straight in the eyes, and I said, I hear you. You do not like that it's bedtime, and you really want to read your book. And I was like, and then I actually invited her, because it was more for me of like acknowledging, like, I didn't want to be like, it's not okay to act like this, because I was immediately thinking how we do that to women. Like we say your emotions are too much. And so I'm very conscious of this in my parenting. And also, it's not great behavior. So it's not how, like, there is a better way for her to be in tune with her emotions than to like blow out her voice screaming like that. And to let her emotions override like the sense of it's not a huge deal and you're really tired, right? Like, so like, how do I find the balance of teaching her to not saying your emotions are not valid, or it's not okay to act this way? So I just looked her in the eyes and I was like, how does your throat feel after screaming like that? And one thing I noticed, and I was talking to her like an adult, and she really, I could feel her gratitude for me meeting her in that way, like holding her and seeing her and not making her wrong. And I was able to be really calm. And I said, how does your throat feel after screaming like that? And one thing I notice is when you're really tired, things become a really big deal. Do you think you're tired? It's really late. It's 10 o'clock and we've read a lot of books. And she like looked at me, and first she goes, huh? Like she wanted me to say it again. Like, so she's really listening, which is so interesting to be able to switch to after a tantrum.
Yeah.
And then I repeated it, and she was like, I am tired, but I love my book. And I said, I know it's hard. You really want to keep reading your book. You love it, but you recognize you're tired. And so like, we'll go to sleep. And And so I compromised. It was like, what's the compromise here? She's like, can I read by myself for a few more minutes? We did that and went to bed. But it was a huge lesson for me in so many regards of just like needing to be held and seen, and also, you know, a deeper lesson about, as women, how we can learn to hold ourselves and our emotions and our range.
Beautiful. I love it.
Parenting. Can't wait for you to step into that one if it is so meant to be.
Yeah, I know. It feels like it's so much. I honor it. I feel fortunate to have a front row seat to it. You know, so many of my dearest sisters are really parenting, and because my friendships are so close, I really get to watch it, and I get to see. But I'm like really tracking the nuance of what an intense thing it is, and how beautifully you guys are all doing it.
And I feel that way about you dating at this time in your life.
Well,
like,
yeah.
I'm not going to go through that. Maybe won't get the opportunity to date as a more conscious, grown woman, and all
such a thing.
such a thing. And it's the same. It's like, I'm not in it, and I'm like fully with my popcorn and tears, like front row center to your experience.
Yeah. It's never a dull moment.
Okay, so we could talk forever. I have to go pick up Violet from school. Actually,
Great.
a minute late. Anything just on your heart you want to share before we close our walk today?
I just feel gratitude. I feel gratitude that this is how I got to spend my morning. And so that's a deep gratitude to you, and also to myself, and to every single one of your people who listens to you and to us, and that we're making these choices. And I often feel, just to rename to myself and to those that I'm in contact with, that these things that we might view as small things are not small things. So choosing to spend an hour tuning into this, as opposed to all of the other options, what's available for you to tune into, is making a difference. And in our lives, and then also as we heal ourselves through these things, we really are contributing those threads of healing to the collective. And it's tiny and minuscule, and also not small at the same time, if that makes sense. And so I just feel to honor that. I really feel that after every session, after every conversation, after every choice that I make that feels like it's from my heart and my truth, that this is important. You're just, by doing this, you're doing what you're here to do. And I'm so grateful to you for your creativity and how it just flows through you. And you have a thing that I don't have, which is you have a creative vision, and then you just do it. You just make it happen. And I feel like I've talked about having a podcast for 2 years, and am not one step closer to having a podcast. But I love that you are, you know?
Like, just share mine, because I'd rather do every episode with you anyways.
Perfect. I'm in.
It'll be Walk with Ginny and Jay from now on.
Great.
Did I tell you what my brother said? I should change the title of the podcast as I get bigger and more pregnant to Waddle with Me instead of Walk with Me.
Oh my God, I love it. He's funny, that Keith.
He's a cutie, I know. What's present for me, I just piggybacking off what you said in our conversation around grief, is that no one ever says on their deathbed, I wish I was more productive.
Yeah, never.
You know, like what really, and there's a book about this. I've talked about it before, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware, who is a hospice nurse. And she says the 5 things that she experienced time after time that people said is, I'd wish I'd had the courage to live life truer to myself and not the life that others expected of me. I wish that I hadn't pushed myself so hard as like my main guiding thing in life. I'd wish that I had the bravery to share my feelings out loud more authentically, more often, more straight from the heart. And I wish that I'd just chosen to be happier. And finally, I wish that I'd stayed more in touch with my friends and spent more time with my friends. And that one really spoke out to me, like getting in person and spending time together. Really, like, I think some of the best times in our friendship and biggest growth edges and even how we met was by being on retreat, getting out with each other in person and making that happen. And we strive to do that every year, even though we've never lived in the same place.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny. I know you'll be back. This is so awesome. Thanks. It was so good to talk to you today. It shifted my whole day around. And I'm going to, in the show notes, if you guys would like to connect with Jenny, if it's okay with you, Jenny, I'll share your Instagram handle so you can have more followers and feel like you have more control.
Perfect.
But no, so you guys can see her cacao ceremonies every morning and mushroom rituals, and all the things that she authentically shares openly, and also just to learn more about her work in the world. And if you're ever looking for a healer, a coach, a mentor, a guide and sister on the path, I'm so lucky to have you on speed dial, and you would be so lucky to have the same. So I'll share all of that in the show notes. You guys can find those, as well as, by the way, don't forget the Captivating Feminine Leadership Retreat, which, Jenny, I hope you'll be at this year. Again, it's February 17th, not this year, 2020. February 17th to February 20th, 2020, if you guys want to come be on retreat with me for sure, and probably with Jenny, because I make her come every year, or I invite her to come every year.
You know, what's fascinating is that'll be my 40th birthday.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then you might not want to be there. We'll see.
We'll see. But
yeah,
it's auspicious.
We'll see where you're led. Yes.
I think I'll probably be somewhere with my beloved, being cherished and celebrated.
I like that vision. I'm holding that. You're allowed to not be at the retreat with us.
Okay,
you're doing
cool.
that for sure. Or maybe the men will be there this year. I also have a vision of that in the future.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Okay, sisters, thank you for walking with us today, and we'll see you on the next walk. I hope this was as beautiful for you as it was for us. And Jenny, thank you again. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.